I despise hippies. Like, they make me angry in my heart, and I'm going to explain to you why. And when I'm done, you're going to be like, you know what, Vex? You make sense. So here you go. You're raised in the utopia version of America, where nothing's overpriced yet. Education's affordable. Your families have houses and jobs and opportunities. This is a fact, okay? This is mathematical. They were the first generation ever where the teenagers had expendable income. Did you know that?
Are you talking about the teenagers of the 70s?
No, I'm talking about baby boomers.
Oh, baby boomers. They were the first generation to have expendable income?
Which invents pop culture in the 50s. Do the math.
That's so interesting.
But think about it. In the 1920s, in the 30s, in the 10s, kids didn't have money. So there's no reason to have pop culture. But in the 50s, kids have access to some money. Oh, I picked up the leaves. I got $2. Let me go buy a record. There's no record, so they made it. So Elvis happens. The Beatles happen. The whole thing happens. So they're the most coddled generation ever in American history at the time. This is a fact. Then they grow up and they all have affordable fucking college because their parents could afford it. It wasn't $50,000 a semester. It was $2,000 and you got a fucking degree. Right. You understand? Think about the disparity, right?
That you could make a living with.
Of course you could. So they all get educated if they're inclined to do so. They didn't have to, but the option was there only because of the affordableness. Yeah. So then they're like, fuck this. The system's broken. We're going to stop Vietnam. We're going to fuck. And that's cool. My dad explained to me, the one who raised me, not my real father, that he was in shock of me in the 90s because I just had sex with everyone who would say yes. And I was grateful and I was on tour and I was having a good time. And he was like, do you understand that when I was your age, I had to marry them for them to fuck me? And I'm like, well, that's your fault, buddy. I don't say no. So he thought that was cool. And no kids, by the way. So, when I don't have AIDS, how cool is that? Because mathematically you figure, but that's a whole thing we'll discuss later.
You got really lucky.
But I use condoms and shit. I'm just saying,
Still,
Anyway. So, this generation is now the hippies and free love, right? And they're like, we're going to stop the war in Vietnam. Not that I support that per se, because the whole Vietnam conflict is a fucking lie and it's a ripoff, but I didn't like how they went around it, or about it, I should say. So it happens. The conflict finally ends. Nixon gets impeached. Now, I am not political. I'm going to stress this to you. I'm not political. I don't have an affiliation. You don't know me that well. I'm telling you to your face. But the reality of it is, unfortunately for the whole world, Nixon was a pretty great fucking president. He did lie. He did cheat. He did steal. These things happened. But he helped the African-American population more than any president before him and actually since. Mm-hmm. All the social things that were cut by Reagan were started by Nixon. You didn't know that, did you? Mm-hmm. It's a thing. But that's fine. So, no, neither am I. But I like history. I was going to be an attorney, so I like history. So Nixon gets ousted. Then they get...
I get my history through Outlander. So you just...
I'm not even saying anything. I'm looking at the camera like...
Go ahead.
So now, the same people who were like, burn it down, become cokeheads in the 70s. Like, baby! So they're different. Okay, you're no longer a hippie. You have these ideals that don't really matter because you're just getting high and getting your dick sucked in your disco land. Okay, then the 80s come. That's the generation that votes in Reagan twice. You hate Nixon. Okay. You grow up, you got a mortgage, didn't you? I do have a mortgage. You got to pay for school for your kid. I do. Who's going to help you? Oh, a Reaganomics country will help you. And they did. They gave us Reagan twice. Then they gave us Bush Sr. So they gave us 12 years of Republican rule. And these are the people that we're talking about. I'm a hippie. I'm going to change the world. So that's already, you don't have any credibility with me. You're already fucked. Like if you're a fucking hippie, be a dirty fucking hippie. Don't change on a dime when bills become real. That's my beef, right? Mm-hmm. Then they do the whole thing. My generation and your generation gives us Clinton, who, by the way, was kind of a fucking car crash, unfortunately. And I liked Clinton. But, oh my God, you look at the policies, not that you care, but they're a car crash. They're a fucking car crash. All of the jobs in this country that left, Clinton signed into bill. Huh. And that hurts because I liked Clinton. That's my dude. And then history, unfortunately, reveals who people really are. Mm-hmm. I despised Bush Jr. when he was the president. I despised him because he seemed dumb. Right. Guess what he called was going to happen? Right. He predicted the pandemic 15 years before it happened. Did you know that? No. They didn't tell you that part, did they? And then when the next president got in, he broke it all down. So Bush Jr., who I don't even like, says, and I'll show you the footage if you're inclined to see it. He's like, listen, something's coming. One day, it's going to click, and we're all going to be in a very bad situation. So he put funding aside specifically for a pandemic. That word. And the next administration cut the funding immediately on day one. And they're like, nothing's ever going to happen. And I didn't believe anything was going to happen either. And then guess what? Something happened. Weird, right?